in chapter 7 entitled Getting to Know the Wiccan Gods and Goddesses. The Wiccans strive for you to believe that God is the opposite of the goddess, that man is the opposite of the woman. And to paraphrase page 26, Sabin discusses a man named Joseph Campbell, who states that if you split God in two, it becomes man and woman on earth. So he is saying that God is a hermaphrodite, and if this mighty God is fractured in two, then you get the poor human creatures found on earth. Then Sabin goes on to state that the Wiccan god and goddess are the yin and the yang, opposites like black and white. So if you think Wicca is the ultimate liberal religion that elevates women up to the level of goddess, think again. It is just more of the same religious junk that goes out of its way to divide the sexes. As many of you should know, men and women are very much the same, and they are in no way opposites. The belief that men and women are opposites is a way to program and then drive the sexes apart and create strife between them. So at this point, I want to bring up something that's written in the Bible. But first, let me tell you that the Bible has been changed and altered in many ways. And in the verse Genesis 3:15, they want you to believe that God is pissed off at the snake for tempting Eve into eating the apple of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. But in reality, it is actually the snake, the demonic God, who is talking to Adam and Eve. So I quote Genesis 3:15, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise her head, and she shall bruise his heel." So the snake has always been the symbol for the pagan or Wiccan priesthood. It's been the symbol for these alien entities that get inside people and give the pagans and Wiccans power over everybody else. And the snake is pictured right in the middle of Adam and Eve, dividing Adam and Eve. Because the snake, or the religious cult, has always strived to divide the sexes, especially those people who are strong and in love. So the snake, or the hermaphrodite, is the opposite of men and women. On page 23, Sabin explains that most religions see God and Satan as opposites and antagonistic, which means they are against each other. While in Wicca, God and Satan are seen as partners, because, she writes, there is no black and white in Wicca, just shades of gray. So if you read between the lines, the religion of Wicca wants you to look at Satan and God as partners, but to see men and women as opposites, who are not alike in any way, and who are at odds with each other, and then find strife within your human species. And how could you progress up the Wiccan ranks to become something of a loveless hermaphrodite? Well, for one, through group sex. And as youths, children of the cult are molested by their Wiccan family members and the people in their Wiccan circles, which are often a series of foster parents, because many of the children are orphans. So none of these families in the inner circles of Wicca are regular families. And when these children grow older, they hate everything to do with families, love, relationships, because of what happened to them in their families. And they only live for the next big ritual, where they could take all of their hate out on a young married couple by putting them through hell and then raping and killing them. That will teach those two about believing in love and family and a normal, healthy relationship. So all these people hate love. They are programmed against love. They think it doesn't exist. They only believe in nature. They believe that humans are just another animal. So in Wicca, they say they worship different gods and goddesses like those found in Greek or Celtic mythology. But in actuality, the Wiccans worship demonic beings under the disguise of the two main gods, the earth goddess and the nature god. The earth goddess is said to represent both life and death. She gives birth to all creatures on earth, and once dead, everything will rot and return back to her. So the female goddess is represented by a large fat earth. And everybody knows that nature often seems very cruel and is without conscience. It's not conscious of its behavior and what it does. It just knows instinct. So the male god is called the nature god and is often represented by Baphomet, that has a human body but the goat's head. It is pictured on tarot cards as being hermaphrodite quite often, and that you have the goat head, and then the chest is divided into a woman's breast on one side and a man's chest on the other. So it's a two-sexed god. And of course it has the man and the woman chained at his feet, divided and chained, as a symbol that they're dividing the sexes and imprisoning the sexes this way. Then on page 32, Sabin writes, "Does holding sex sacred mean Wiccans have ceremonial orgies? Understanding the spiritual side of sex frees some people from society's tight constraints about sex, so they may be more likely to experiment with multiple partners, which is hardly an orgy. So according to Wiccans like Sabin, the spiritual side of sex does not have much to do with a man and woman getting married, having children together, raising the children, but the spiritual side of sex, according to Sabin, is experimenting with multiple partners, much like animals in nature, which she will tell you is hardly an orgy, because Sabin obviously definitely knows from experience." Then in the next section, under ethics and empowerment, she writes, "In Wicca, there are no thou shalts. There is no book, religious figure, or burning bush telling Wiccans what is ethical and what is not, and what will happen if they screw up. One of the empowering but terrifying things about Wicca is that a Wiccan has to determine what ethics to follow for him or herself." So she is telling you that there is no moral base to this religion, and they get to make up the rules as they go along. So this is quite a religion, especially for those who want to attack their fellow human beings. Next, the Wiccans have what they call the Law of Three, and then they have the Wiccan Rede. And these are two defense arguments Wiccans are taught to conjure up in the event their religion is ever attacked by someone. First, I'll talk about the Wiccan Rede that says, quote, "If it harms none, do as you will." But what is funny is that on page 35, directly after explaining the Wiccan Rede, Sabin brings up the big question on every Wiccan's mind, which is, how exactly is harm defined? And shouldn't this also be seen in shades of gray? Like, a Wiccan may wonder, if you kill something that's really bothering you, is that exactly harming it? Or if you get a job over someone else, maybe because you are part of a group of insiders and they are not, have you in fact harmed those people too? So it seems this is a big problem for the average Wiccan. What does harming people actually mean? And what exactly can you get away with? So she concludes this little dilemma by stating on page 36, quote, that the focus on the Wiccan Rede is on you, your life, and the choices you make. And you shouldn't worry about someone you may or may not harm by your actions. Then on page 37 she writes, quote, "Since there is no morality police in Wicca, then there is nobody to determine if Wiccans have done something right or wrong but themselves. So all you child-killing, satanic Wiccan scum can all breathe a sigh of relief." Then their next defense phrase is the oh-so-popular Law of Three. And this is another vacant defense, a witch will shout out while under duress. And they'll tell you that they believe in the Law of Three. And that means whatever you do comes back 3 times more. So if you do wrong, then bad things will come back to you 3 times as much. So Sabin brings up this uncomfortable point, but quickly attempts to put all the evil witches' minds to rest by saying on page 38, quote, "Even if the threefold law be true, the universe does not keep scorecards. It just doesn't work that way. So don't expect an immediate reward or a head whacking for whatever you do." So again, this exposes a very guilty conscience that is trying to relieve herself and others about what may come back to them for all the disgusting things they've done to others over their pathetic lives. In conclusion, from my knowledge of the cult, a lot of these Wiccan satanic priests go out of their way to harm others, to attract evil energy. And they call that power. And even though this power will hurt them, it will deform them, it will cause them injury, it will cause them sickness, it will make them smell bad, it'll make them look ugly. They don't care. In their opinion, it marks them as a very powerful witch, so they don't care. The only thing they care about is scaring, controlling, traumatizing, and killing others. That's what they live for. So these guys who are the head priests of pagan witchcraft use the law of three to do wrong and to attract terrible energy and power. Alright, that brings us to the topic of energy, which is what they often call power. And Thea Sabin addresses energy in chapter 3. On page 43 she writes, energy is important in Wicca. And then she quotes a guy named Scott Cunningham, a famous Wiccan author, who says there are three types of power. The power generated by your body, the power generated by the gods, and the power generated by the earth. Then Sabin will tell you also on page 43 that Wiccans hone their ability to feel and read energy. And Wiccans also believe they could bend or use energy to bring about change, which is what magic is all about. Alright, on page 52, she discusses raising energy, but then needing to get rid of it. And she quotes somebody that she calls an old magician once said, quote, you should never call anything up that you don't know how to banish. And then she makes a point of saying that this old magician is referring to spirits, demons, and other scary stuff that you could find mention of in grimoires from the Middle Ages. On page 75 through 77, Sabin attempts to address meditation and instead gives you the worst information and the worst advice on meditation that you can ever find to read. She basically tells you to do the exact opposite of what every meditation master around the world has said to do. She describes a very dangerous thing, which is ultimately a form of anti-meditation. And she calls this grounding. She says to imagine yourself as a tree, and a root is growing out of the base of your spine into the earth. And you want to draw energy up out of the earth and force it down into your legs. Then bring it up your spine. And then allow it to split. And she uses the word split. And then allow it to run down each of your arms. So she is describing how to channel Kundalini energy, which is very negative energy. It is demonic energy. It is basically a demonic possession. So when she says you should never call anything up that you don't know how to banish, she does not know how to do this at all. In fact, she is describing how to help the energy attach itself to you. Those of you who are familiar with my meditation videos, like energy lifts and frequency shifts, will know that the proper way is to pull Kundalini energy out of your body. Keep it centered and move it up and out through your crown chakra point. So what she is describing is called channeling energy by splitting it. And this is exactly what I warned you about in the video entitled Mothman. This is a diagram I drew. And you can find the complete video on my affiliate channel, Bulletproof Cyrus 13. And that will show you exactly what the Wiccans are channeling and what these things do to you once they're inside you. So if you don't get rid of the Kundalini energy, it channels and then recirculates throughout your body and eventually creates hard implants. They form in your gut, in your chest, in your neck, in your lungs, in your brain. They will cause tumors, cancers, heart and lung disease, mental disorders. It will deform you, give you hunchbacks. It will press on your trachea. It will deform you and cause all types of illness in general.